Hello and welcome to the class of 2024. And welcome to Stanford. First, we want to congratulate you on your admission. And we are so excited to have this conversation with you and give you some insight into the FLI, first generation and or low income experience at Stanford. We want to emphasize that everyone's experience is different, so we in no way see this as a projection of what you'll face at Stanford, especially since the FLI identity is so broad. I am one of your moderators along with Princess and Emily. And the rest of the lovely people on your screens are the panelists that will be having a conversation about the FLI experience. Sorry about that. How to be a FLI ally and answering your questions. My name is Alain Perez. I use he, him pronouns. I'm involved in Frost Council. I'm a Frost Service Liaison with the Haas Center for Public Service. I'm involved with the Stanford Daily, a member for Students for Workers' Rights, and I'm a proud member of the Latinx and FLI community. The way this is going to work is that each of the panelists will have a minute to introduce themselves to you all. We will then get into some information about FLI resources and spaces where we will have a share screen of some slides. And then there will be a significant amount of time to answer your questions, since from the last call we saw that all of you came with many, which we appreciate all of your questions so much. So we want to have a lot of time to answer them all. Before we get into that, we want to let you know that we are not the financial aid office, and thus we are not the best to speak about the resources associated with them. We are here to speak to you about our experiences, and any financial aid questions can be directed to financialaid@stanford.edu. This session will be recorded and placed on FLIP, which is the First Generation Low Income Partnership's YouTube channel. You can look it up in like a few days and like Stanford FLIP on YouTube, and you should be able to find it. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate your time and hope that you learn all about the FLI community at Stanford and all about the FLI experience. We will now allow the panelists to introduce themselves, and then Princess can guide the conversation with the slides. We can go in alphabetical order if y'all are comfortable with that again. So that starts us off with Daniela.
Hi, y'all. My name is Daniela. I use she, her pronouns. In terms of the FLI spectrum, I am under Stanford's definition not technically considered first gen. My parents went to college in the Philippines. So under like how Stanford defines first generation, I don't technically count, but I do in a way consider myself first generation because my parents did not know how to navigate like the American college system. So that was like I had to do all of that on my own. And then in terms of the low income portion of FLI, I identify with that heavily. My dad is the only one who works in our family. And I grew up in a community that was majority like working class, majority low income. And then major involvement in terms of Stanford. So I'm heavily involved in the FLI community in a lot of ways. Kiara and I are currently co-presidents of the First Gen Indoor Low Income Partnership, which is the FLI student org on campus. I've been staffing at the FLI office since my freshman year, and since for the past 2 years have been involved with the FLI conference. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then next we have Jamie.
Hi everyone, my name's Jamie, they, she pronouns. I am first generation and very low income. If you have any questions on how to like manage like homelessness or being afraid to go back to where now during breaks and things, I can kind of touch on some of those questions. And then my major involvements, I've definitely fallen off in the past few years, but started out with SLAP, or Students for the Liberation of All People. If you happen to come across like a disorientation guide, SLAP makes those. And then other than that, I just kind of am here in case someone needs me and reaches out.
Thank you, Jamie. Next we have Kiara.
Hi, my name's Kiara, she, her pronouns. In terms of where I land on the FLI spectrum, I'm definitely on the more privileged end, maybe not even FLI side of it. And I say that because I came to America as a low-income immigrant, and maybe 15 years later, my family is now pretty solidly middle income. My parents, like Daniela, also went to college in Philippines, and because of like a lot of special privileges with the relationship the U.S. has with Philippines, because of passive imperialism and occupation, their degrees transferred and their degrees counted. And so we were able to pick back up really fast, despite coming to this country low income. So that's where I land on the FLI spectrum. Trying to understand whether or not I am FLI is still something that I struggle with a lot. And it makes me question my ability to do the kind of work that I do in many ways. But in terms of major involvements, my commitment is singularly to the FLI community, funny enough. So yeah, if there's anyone here that's not even sure if they should be here, I feel that. And we could definitely talk more too about what exactly it means to be FLI.
Thank you for sharing. Next we have Maximilian. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maximino. Any pronouns are fine. In terms of my connection to the FLI spectrum, I resonate really heavily with Kiara's words. I'm not first generation. My dad went to college in New Mexico, but in our family, it's kind of been he and I have been the only ones to like navigate that together, and definitely leaving home with something new for my family. In terms of the low income connection, my family is involved in a type of work that is just really unstable. So some years have been okay, and other years have been very much not okay. So similarly, and I feel like now that I'm at Stanford, though, things are a little bit more stable. So I definitely question whether or not I don't want to like take up space from those who like carry that experience, but I'm really grateful to be in this space and want to be of support however possible. Major involvements, I'm really heavily connected to the Latinx community, exploring ever evolving queerness, and I'm an oral communication tutor at UM. So grateful to be here.
Thank you for sharing, Maximino. And then we also have Makai.
Hello, everybody. Also really great to be here as well. Thank you for having me, fellow panelists. But my name's Makai. Use he, him pronouns. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. And then on the first gen side, my mom didn't go to college. She dropped out of high school. And low income, raised on like government assistance and everything. Can also speak on the homelessness, like how to file, what it actually means, type of side of things if you fall into that bucket. So please feel free to ask us questions. And major involvements, my two biggest ones this year's has been being a barber on campus. I cut hair. So that's a heavy Black community thing. And I also have started a podcast, so the Come Up Collective Pod. And that's been my most recent like major involvement. And I could speak on that. And we dropped the episode today. So if you're curious, you got some new content for you.
Drop the link in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, drop. So thank you, FLI panelists and panelists that are allies, for your introductions. Now the moderators can go. Princess or Emily, would you like to go first?
Emily, go ahead.
My name is Emily Nichols. I use she, her pronouns. For me, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. For me, I am both low income and first generation. My mom, she graduated high school, and she raised us as a single mother, me and all three of my sisters. For me, I'm heavily involved in like the FLI community. I'm a part of the Flip Corps, the LSP Council, and I also work at the Black Community Service Center in the Stanford House Center as a public service intern. And I'm also co-founder of Scholars of Finance. So if y'all have any questions about those organizations, hit me up.
Hey everyone, my name is Princess. I use she, they pronouns, like either or. I'm from Stockton, California, which is only like an hour out from campus. And which is like the same place as Daniela. So I come from a place that's like where most people are low income or come from like concentrated poverty. I come from like a mixed status family as well as a very like systems impacted family. So if you have any questions about like the transition from your hometown to campus, let me know. And my major involvements include, well, I'm currently running for Senate, and then I mostly spend a lot of my time like at the Haas Center, which we'll talk about more later, which the Haas Center for Public Service, and off campus doing work study.
Hi, so I've sort of talked a little bit about this, but I'll talk about what I haven't touched on. So again, Alain, he, him pronouns. I'm from Miami, Florida, and my parents are Cuban. So I'm Cuban American, and I definitely identify a lot with that, especially since a lot of Miami is Cuban. So I grew up around a very Hispanic and Latinx community, but mostly focused on that Cuban identity. And where I land on the fly spectrum, so I'm definitely first generation. My parents and my grandparents had to be pulled from school early in Cuba, so at fifth grade, sixth grade, to work and make cheese to make a living in Cuba. And then on the low income part, it also sort of alternates because my dad is a small business owner, since he's an electrician. So it alternates from really good years to really bad years. And I've helped him, since he doesn't speak English, a lot about translating documents and writing invoices for him in English. So it alternates. There are some years that are better than others. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Sorry, I didn't answer that part of the question. The way you land on the supply spectrum. I'm both first gen and low income. Both of my parents were refugees for most of their life before moving to the U.S. And I definitely relate to on and off financial situation because my mom is a healthcare worker. So right now with the pandemic happening, this means a lot for our family. We're gonna move on. So please use the Q&A function that's on the webinar. You can see it underneath all of the screens. If you have any questions that come up either during the info session or afterwards, we'll be answering them at around 9:45 PST. And then all the information that we're talking about can also be found at this link, which I will show later in the slides if you don't catch it now. So we're gonna get started. First, we want to start by introducing that we have numerous community centers. So if there's anyone that I'm forgetting, please pitch in and let me know. But this is basically a list. We have the FLI office, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, and a lot of the FLI office's resources. We have several ethnicity-related community centers. As well as the Marquez Women's Community Center and Queer Student Resources Center.
There's also I don't know if it's technically a community center, but if we're listening to FLI office, which is not technically a community center, then there's the Jewish community center, Hillel, that can be found on the row of Stanford.
Thanks, Kira. All right. Sorry, this PowerPoint is whack. To get started, like Danielle and Kira said earlier, they are co-presidents for FLIP, so they can do a little FLIP introduction just to get to know what we're doing further.
Yeah, so I could do that. So FLIP is basically a Students for Students volunteer student organization at Stanford that started right about 10 years ago. And the reason we exist is because basically FLI students were sitting together in the basement of Main Quad, which is one of the oldest parts of campus, and they were just talking and just talking about their problems, and they realized that A, they weren't alone, and B, their problems had real solutions, and it wasn't just them complaining, there was some systematic shit going on. So that created various FLI student groups until it finally settled on FLIP. And so for 10 years, we've been doing advocacy work for FLI students. We've been doing community building events for FLI students. We've just been doing everything we possibly can to carve out a space for FLI students at Stanford. And that has culminated in events such as this, where we're literally taking charge as FLI students, trying to provide resources we think that FLI students need, even when the university is going whack.
Yeah. So that's basically FLIP. FLIP is super awesome. And as you'll see when you come to Stanford, we have a huge FLI community. And it's pretty much we all know each other. And then you'll see why moreover all these experiences. So we also want to talk about the financial literacy FLI guide and Mind Over Money, which Makai can speak a little bit to.
Yeah. So the FLI guide, the student Christopher Middleton, he it was a kind of an independent project that spurred out of being FLI himself, and wanting to provide other FLI students on campus abilities to navigate credit, loans, saving, investing, and all of that, and especially post-grad. And that was a model that worked so well that Stanford kind of formalized it and put to actual an official organization called Mind Over Money, in position to do that for all of like the undergraduate like demographics, so undergrads, or student demographics, so undergrads, graduate students, fly or not. And again, it touches on all of those like verticals of how to handle money. So you could build up the like financial practices, the good financial practices, and decision making, and have the right tools to basically handle your money correctly. I know, especially for FLI students, like this is a topic that they didn't necessarily learn from their parents, or won't be able to learn from their parents. So they'll have on campus like what are they called? Not seminars, not webinars. I guess just presentations. Presentations on all of those topics. Workshops. They'll have workshops with students to kind of bootstrap some of those skills. You'll hear a lot about them once you get on the campus. So if you don't have a lot of experience with all of those like verticals of how to handle money, we have formal avenues for you to navigate that.
Right. Thanks for sharing. We saw that one of the main concerns that a lot of like profros have is about reading your financial aid letter, and that's especially like a big part of your decision right now. So if you do have like any pressing questions about it, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll try to give you like our best advice. But as you get to campus, you'll definitely learn a lot more. Next up, we have fostering connections, which one of our panelists can also speak to.
Yeah. So Connections is basically, it's a really cool organization that came out of a past Flip intern, actually, who saw Flip's work and realized that we were missing something really big, and that was serving students who had experienced homelessness or just like non-traditional family situations. And so if you're a student, as Jamie and Makai offered, who are looking for a community who knows and understands the experience, because it is very unique, it is something that is often overlooked. For example, Family Weekend at Stanford used to be called Parents Weekend, and just general like assumptions about what our families actually look like, that are really just not aware of like the diversity of the students at Stanford as a whole. And so Classroom Connections is a really great place for FLI students that have had those experiences, are looking for community and looking for resources specifically. They also just really try and get money and food to you guys for free. Like that's pretty much like also half of their mission is just to like give y'all shit. So highly recommend.
Cool, thank you. We also have the First Generation and Low Income Network, FLAN, and the Flip SIB program. This, in combination with like Flip's alumni mentor program and mentor program, are great sources and like great ways to build connections within the FLI network. So we have a pretty extensive community, and we have some panelists who can speak to this and their experiences with mentors / like other people, other FLI identities.
Yeah. So FLAN is, like it says, the First Gen Low Income Alumni Network. So when you graduate from Stanford, you can join FLAN and have access to resources that alumni have. They also are a huge part of mentorship. So alumni will like reach out to us. We do like workshops with them. We do like alumni mixers, things like that, so that FLI students can get to know other FLI students who have like made it through Stanford and are like out there living their lives in the world, and sort of see what that's like and how to navigate that. And then the Flip SIB program is, it pairs FLI Frosh with FLI upperclassmen. So if you sign up when you come in the fall, you can fill out like whatever your interests are, and we'll find an upperclassman who has similar interests, and that way you'll have like a mentor to sort of guide you through undergrad and see what that's like.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thanks for sharing. We want to emphasize how important this is, because I know that like personally there are just some things that I would not know how to do at Stanford if it wasn't for like another FLI identifying person helping me out. And that goes for like financial aid, like, or financial resources, academic, etc. And like Kira was saying, like the FLI or like stuff like this and things like this get created when people are just sitting around having conversation, and the FLI office is definitely somewhere where this conversation like thrives. We next have a bunch of financial resources. So the first is the Welcome Grant. And basically the Welcome Grant is like if you have an EFC of 0 and you come into the school, your first year you can qualify for automatically like $2,000, and that gets deposited into your account over the course of freshman year. So at the beginning of every quarter, you get like a really nice check, and that hits. If anyone wants to speak at that, go for it. Awesome. And then we also have like work study / community service work study, CSWS, and this appears as like a part on your financial aid letter, which we understand is confusing, but if you see like FWS or federal work study, you just don't have to worry about that at all. It just means that you qualify for it. And basically what work study is that you can get a job either on campus during the school year for $16 to $19 an hour, and it can be like anything. Usually it's like working in a library. You can even find like a position where you're working in a lab in CSW, or in your work study will cover it. Or you can do CSWS off campus nearby. So for example, I work at a nonprofit in East Palo Alto, and I like genuinely love the work that I do. And I'm so excited that Stanford is like paying me to go work at this nonprofit so that they don't have to give up so much of their money. And they also pay for transportation. So it's really cool. And then during the summer, you can also apply for CSWS, and it's super awesome because basically what you do is that you like go to the Haas Center, you say, hey, here's this organization that I really want to work with, and they like pay for you, or they give you like a stipend to work there. And it can even happen like in your hometown. It can be literally anywhere. We also have the Opportunity Fund and Summer Equity Grant, which one of our panelists can speak to.
Yeah, so both of these are run through the FLI office. The qualification is you do have to have an expected family contribution of less than 5K, but if you qualify for it, you can essentially apply to have the FLI office cover any sort of emergency costs that come up. So if you said it, like if something happens back home and you need to like suddenly fly home and you can't afford like a plane ticket, they'll cover it. They also cover like bringing your family one time for family weekend. They cover bringing your family for graduation, and also other things that are listed there, like attending conferences, any like academic things that you might need. But there are certain limitations, so they can't fund things like study abroad or any non-essential tech, and they also can't pay for tuition. But anything that falls outside of those things, you can usually ask them and they will try to find a way to cover it.
Op fund comes in clutch sometimes. So sometimes it's an emergency, other times it's something that's like really important to you. So for example, I know somebody who used the op fund to register for their citizenship exam and pay for all those fees. And it was really cool. Here's a list of academic resources, and we won't go through the entire thing, but if there is anybody who would like to speak about like the Flyberry or how they use drop-in hours, please go ahead.
I can talk about the Flyberry a little bit. It's really neat. So essentially, if you can't afford a textbook or you're just not trying to buy a textbook for whatever class, you can go to the Fly office. They've got this really nice online database of all the books they have there. And you can see if your book is there, check it out for the quarter, completely free. Just have to make sure to return it by the end of the quarter. I personally have used the Flyberry for a language class, since one of your requirements is to take a year's worth of a language at Stanford. And I had the book there, so it was really nice. You also can't like write in the book, obviously, but it's a great resource to use.
Cool, thank you, Jamie. As you can see, we also have like tutoring hours, which can be like for subject specific. So if you need additional help, like simply because you don't have like experience taking these classes, or find that you're like, for example, you just study better like talking to another person rather than like sitting down with a textbook, you can use tutoring. You can also go to the Hume Center, which is for speaking and writing. And like we were saying earlier, we have like mentors who can help you in like academic and career sense. Next up are wellness resources. So we have SARA, Shipwreck, which are both sexual health and sexual assault resources. And then CAPS and/or Bridge Peer Advising and the Wellness Center, and just a bunch of like other wellness resources that one of our panelists can speak to.
All right, y'all. So CAPS, Peer Advising Wellness, really wonderful resources to connect with while on campus when things can get oversaturating. It's just really wonderful to know that there are these resources that are continuing to develop to really just like prioritize mental health and well-being. For me, I can briefly speak to just my frost year experience. Like essentially there was just like a lot of stigmatization of like mental health from the community that I came from, but I ended up through there are like CAPS Connects appointments, so they have like counselors in each of the community centers that you could go to, and that was really helpful for me to connect with someone like through El Centro. So there was just like an overlap of experiences there, and I ultimately had this wonderful counselor who was this like queer, Latina, indigenous queen of a human being who could just who really validated just a lot of who validated for me that, oh, these things I'm feeling, like this isn't just like me like being weak or being unable to like write an essay. This is me having things that need to be processed. So CAPS is really great. You can either make appointments on like the Vaden Health Net portal or walk in if that's something that you're comfortable with. Wellness Center, bridge peer advising. If you don't feel comfortable talking to a counselor, there's a bridge peer advising, like the bridge, also wonderful, all like completely student run. All the students get training and being able to have conversations with students on different topics. So if that's something you'd also be interested in doing, there are like 2 classes that you would take. And a lot of my friends who have done work at the bridge have said that that's been one of the most fulfilling aspects of their time at Stanford. And there are also just like a bunch of wellness classes. I took one in meditation. My frosh spring was wonderful. And they have things, anything from like laughter to like, like one of my teachers is teaching one on laughter, but TLDR, if there are any more questions or there's any way like I could be of support on talking about like just mental health and awareness, I would say like I've had net positive experiences at Stanford, and even if so, like CAPS is still developing in its ability to like be more directly inclusive and like taking action to have like a greater representation of the counselors who are there. But regardless, I think it's been a wonderful thing to like develop tools that you could then go into having conversations with other people or being able to take care of yourself and know that all of y'all here are meant to like radiate and like be a gift to everyone that you cross paths with.
I just quickly had something to add to the list was CST, or Confidential Services Team. So CAPS and CST can do similar things. They have counselors and therapists, but in terms of your privacy or confidentiality, their reporting system is just like a little bit different. So if you're nervous about that at all and you're afraid, like if I say this, something's going to happen either to me or to my family, CST is likely the option you'd want to go with.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue, for sharing. Next up, we have just a couple of resources by other centers and sources. So we have academic skills coaching, the Office of Accessible Education, which is for like any academic accommodations you might need, as well as Beam, career advising, which one of our panelists can also speak about. Oops.
That may be me. So Beam, is basically a house that is one job is to help students get professional experiences with companies, nonprofits, or anything of the sort. So it's a great place to, if you don't know how to navigate networking, resumes, like applications and interviews, they have coaches and professionals there with a lot of knowledge and guidance for you. And they routinely host career fairs for like all sorts of majors. Typically, you'll hear that many career fairs at Stanford are very STEM focused, and I would agree. But you'll find a nice amount of like smaller career fairs that Beam hosts that are like specific for verticals, like specific for creatives who want to go into like media, or specific for humanities majors, or a subset of them. So Beam is a great place for like anything you want to do over the summer or after you graduate.
Thanks. What's crazy too is that they're even like continuing doing career outreach even like during the pandemic. I know that they had a career fair like on Thursday right before our other call.
They're super active because they know that a lot of FLI students are losing their summer opportunities right now. And so that's why they're like really pushing to try and get FLI students opportunities in case the university, again, fails to take care of us.
Yeah, and I think they still have like drop-in hours too for like resume advice, which is something that I used a lot last year when like applying to things for the summer. And I specifically would go to the ones in the FLI office because I felt like that was a space where I could talk more about like any struggle or like feel like I was more open to go to if like my resume wasn't as polished and like I wouldn't get like judged as much or anything. Since like the FLI experience does involve like me not being able to get like professional help that may either cost money or professional help from like my parents, since like they don't have resumes. So yeah.
Next up, we have a Q&A section. So we see that you guys have dropped some things in the Q&A as well as the chat. Feel free to add like anything you want throughout the rest of the call. We will also be asking a couple of questions that we've collected on the side. So I guess now is a good time to get started.
Yeah, and I also want to say that like any question is like pretty much anything that we can answer, we'll answer. So like drop any question. The worst we could say is like, oh, we don't have the expertise. Literally anything you want to ask. This is your chance to have access to, can't count fast, but however many FLI students there are here for you to get your questions answered. So don't be shy, just say what you want and we'll do our best.
So I think the first question that came is, what kinds of dorm bonding experiences have you all been involved in?
I'm gonna go.
I can speak a little to mine.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Oh my God.
You can go.
This is a question that kind of came up last time when we were talking about like the different vibes in dorms, and so we were saying that it's like kind of dependent on where you are on campus, and like who's around you. So that in my dorm we were like in my dorm we were super politically active, and like I don't know if this is a dorm bonding experience because it like definitely wasn't planned as one, but we watched the Dem debate or like the Dem debates as they came up, and I swear everybody went to the freaking Dem debate but never a house meeting.
What the hell? Sometimes dorms would do really cool trips. So typically, especially freshman dorms, they tend to do like a trip in winter quarter, going to places like Lake Tahoe and just like like a very short like weekend vacation kind of thing. My dorm decided to do something else. They decided to take us on a day trip to, well, because like my dorm was called Robley and we were the theme was on sustainability. So somehow they were able to justify a really bougie food trip up to Marin County, which is like, if you think Stanford, like that shit is just like bougie. You could feel it in the air. You could smell it. And we basically just went to like all these like small little farms where they taught us about how they were somehow practicing some kind of more sustainable farming shit. And then like after hearing them, we would, with this one guy, he had like a goat and sheep farm and he literally gave us as much like artisanal cheese as we wanted and like these bougie sandwiches. I held a goat that was born 30 minutes prior. It was weird. And then we went to Tomales Bay and we just ate like maybe a couple $100 worth of oysters, fresh oysters. That was pretty dope. But yeah, there's like a lot of like weird. And so for other students, I think it like cost X amount, but for FLI students, it was like anywhere from way less than X amount or even free. So like that's a cool thing that a lot of dorms have been instilled is like trying to make it so like a no questions asked policy. If you say you can't afford something, then they just say like okay, and they let you come anyways. So that's not a perfect system because some dorms kind of ignore that, but a lot of dorms are trying to do that kind of thing.
Another really great dorm thing I did was the scavenger hunt. I don't know if every dorm does it, or every freshman dorm does it, but I really was a big fan of it, where they basically just take you up to San Francisco for the day, and you have like a packet of like 100 tasks you can do, like random tasks that range from like getting an ice cream at the Ghirardelli factory, which is notable up there, to like getting a tattoo at a tattoo parlor. Right, and with each one being different points, and you like break up into very small groups, maybe like 4 or 5 students, and like just go around the city doing random stuff, which is it brought me a lot closer with my other dorm mates, which I really enjoyed.
I don't know if this has already been covered, but a lot of things like going into the city or like ski trips and stuff, depending on what your dorm is doing, you can get either like completely the fees waived for that, or you can get very heavy subsidization. And if you need further assistance, there's definitely going to be someone who can help you out with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't ever feel like you can't like experience a part of Stanford or experience a part of something like with other friends just because of your financial background. Like it might sometimes be a different situation if it's just going off campus, but if it's something planned by the school, like you'll have the resources for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I was able to go skiing. My first time skiing. It was a lot of fun.
And they don't ask for like formal verification of it, right? They kind of just ask you, are you on it?
Yeah, they just ask if it's a financial burden. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some dorms just like kind of make you say more than needed, but they never make you show any papers or anything like that. So if anything, it could just be like really uncomfortable. But they can't ask you to show them proof.
I can't lie, I fully pulled out someone tried to ask me questions. I went, yikes, that's kind of classist. Please don't ask me that. Works fine for me, but like, I guess be careful, like know who you're talking to and what your relationship is with them, because that could get sticky.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. Yeah, Emily.
Yeah. I think the next question is, how do you manage club involvements?
That's a good question. We have a lot of people in this call who are like starters of different like foundations or like VSOs or presidents.
Yeah.
Now, I could kick us off with my advice. Is I think like I had seen to an earlier question of like being, I think I would say most students are doing like 3, 4. I would say, at least in like a significant, portion or involvement type of thing. But remember that in each club involvement, you can have varying levels. Like you could be the president of one, and then like just a regular core member of another one, or just like you just show up to events for another, right? So there's a little bit of like there's a spectrum of involvement involved with it. But do recognize that school takes up a lot of time. And I didn't know that my freshman year. Like I think in comparison to my high school and how much work I had to put in like per day, type of thing, like Stanford was a new lesson. It was a big new lesson for me. So I'll definitely say don't overload your schedule. And remember that like you could do a few things really well, or you could do a lot of things like okay or so. But I think like as you go through Stanford, you may try new clubs and don't feel like or feel free to try things and then just recognize like, oh, maybe next year I might not join this in as big of a capacity as I did this year. So you may just go through an array of clubs. Like for me, I was on Bonga, like a Stanford Indian dance team.
Oh, really?
My year. Yeah, it was lit.
Hey.
It was lit. But it was a lot of time. And I'm like, yeah, nah, maybe not. I enjoyed it all, but I got other things to do. So, and what that comes to is, I think just throughout college, you'll be working on your time management skills, and you'll pick up tools for it. So like to quickly close, I'll recommend like using Google Calendar and use some task management system as a way to keep up with everything that you do, whether that's clubs or school. But managing both, make sure you have like a formal system so you don't forget about things or meetings.
Yeah, I think in terms of like clubs too, there's like literally just for registered student organizations, there's like 600 plus of us, so many. And so what I'm like trying to say is you shouldn't feel like you have to do a certain thing to get it on your resume if you don't like it. Like there's just so many things you can get involved with at Stanford that you don't need to do something you want to do to like feel like you're involved, feel like you're doing stuff, because there's so many options out there for you. Also, this is a tip that I've gotten. If you get to a point where you just have so many commitments and so many extracurriculars and you like don't know what to do or how to get out of it, if you have like the opportunity to, going abroad is the best reset button ever. You literally just dip, no one gives a shit, people understand you're abroad, and then you come back and you're just like, oh, I'm a new person.
Thanks, y'all. The next question is, can you discuss your experiences with food and dining halls at Stanford?
I mean, it low-key depends on like where you live. There's definitely like the different dining halls have different like reputations. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have lived in Wilbury for the past like basically my entire Stanford career. And I have watched them go from like I never want to eat here to yeah, this is great. Yeah. So dining halls can like improve and stuff. And then what I recommend is I think like Frosh get automatically put on like 14 meals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that comes like meal plan dollars as well, and like definitely use those. Like if you get tired of dining hall food, go to like one of the little cafes that they have that take meal plan dollars. Meal plan dollars are basically like is like fake money that Stanford like gives you that you can use at like their cafes and stuff like that. And honestly, when like dining hall food gets like repetitive, it's really nice to just like take a break from it and like eat somewhere else. Or even like if you have like classes that go through meals, like it's so much easier to just get food at a cafe than it is to like go all the way back to your dorm and go to a dining hall and then like go back to class.
I also think after being on campus for like a few years, like obviously we're gonna have some critiques too about like how seasoned or not seasoned the food is. But like, first of all, hot sauce saves a whole lot of things. But then also I think like when I first came here and like experienced the dining halls, I think I just felt very, very blessed because I was like, I don't know what my mom's eating tonight, and this is like so much food. And then like hearing like some people kind of complain about it got under my skin a little bit, because I'm like, this is great. Like this is buffet style. Like there's so many options. There's fresh food. Like it was really great. But like, yeah, your palate can probably get sick of it after a while. I don't know how it compares to other schools though.
Thank you. And another question that came up is, what is the best way for us to get involved in the FLI community or flip core at Stanford?
We could answer the flip core one after other people answer the FLI community one.
Honestly, just like hang out at the FLI office. First of all, that's where you're going to meet like a bulk of FLI students on campus. There's some bridge programs. They're not the end all be all to the FLI experience or meeting other FLI students. And in fact, like there's a little bit of like clickiness over them at points. But yeah, I met a whole bunch of FLI students I didn't know beforehand at the FLI office or through VSOs and classes. Like the experience for some people can just like come out because they're very proud of it. For other people, they're like not really trying to like let the world know that they're FLI, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely also just like go to events. Like both Flip and the FLI office will like host like all sorts of different events, and like like I did a bridge program, but like people I met outside of that program, like I would meet just by like Jamie said, like either hanging out at the office or just like going to different things and like meeting other people.
Yeah.
One of the greatest tips that I've gotten, sorry, Kiara.
No.
One of the greatest tips that I've like gotten is to just try to increase your like good randomness at any given moment, right? So like everyone's always like, what if I do this or what if I do that? And when you go to an event, you're like, what if all these bad things happen? But what if there are so many what if there are like a billion good things that happen that you had like never even considered before? And the same thing just applies to like being in space. So like being in a space like increases good randomness of like so many possibilities happening. And a lot of that at Stanford, like since it is a small community, means meeting people. And so you never know who you're gonna meet.
Yeah. And like also, and I say this with caution because I don't want to conflate race with socioeconomic status, because that's a problem that we have at Stanford and in the US as a whole. But going to other community center events tends to put you in contact with other FLI students too. For example, every Friday, El Centro, which is like the Latinx community center, has this thing called Comunidad. Oh shit, Cafecito. And basically you just literally turn up, grab some hot chocolate, grab some pan dulce, and you just hang out, listen to music, and you meet people. And that's literally all that space is for. Maximino, do you want to talk more? Like, that shit is just fire.
Retweet of Cafecito. Oh my goodness, Cara, thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah, it's awesome. Every Friday it's at like 10 a.m. or something. Like, yeah, everybody just pulls through, and it's just like something for like the whole community, toda la comunidad. And like every time I've gone there, like you could just pull up with friends, or you could just go like and be chaotic on your own. Mm-hmm. And every time I've gone, I end up meeting like someone who I maybe would have never crossed paths with in other like classes or things that I had at Stanford. Like I met a first and second year PhD student, like looking specifically at like, oh my gosh, it was like racial stratification in Colombia. And then we just started talking about like music and like the Super Bowl with like Shakira bringing like Mapale and Champeta to it. And it's just like, that's a conversation that I would have never had like on a tender Friday morning. So 12 out of 10 would recommend going to Cafecito and just any of those events there. Like, I know for me, like every time I get through a week at Stanford, I'm like, okay, it's another one and I can feel really drained. But going to community events like that, retweet of, yeah, I don't mean to keep on using the word, but yeah, just Kiara and then Princess sentiment on like the good randomness. Like, had I not gone to that, there's so many conversations and people I would have met. Also, the director of El Centro, Elvira Prieto, has this beautiful dog, Luna, who will just heal your entire being. That's it. But yeah, that's Cafecito.
Yeah, and see, that's literally just one community center out of that whole list that we showed at the beginning of this thing. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to meet other FLI kids, and even if it's not a FLI specific space. In terms of getting involved in Flip Core, so Flip for Frosh, basically the main way for you to get involved is to get involved through our intern program. We're revamping it this coming year so that A, we can accept a few more people, and B, we can lower the commitment so that you can have time to figure out your freshman year while still testing out the waters and seeing how you feel about getting involved in FLI leadership at Stanford. For when you become a sophomore, junior, senior, whatever, you can join you can join Flip Core as a full-time member, which is a 1-year commitment through an application. And like, you just apply, interview, and if we think that you seem to have a really good vision for the FLI community, seem really involved, and seem like you can do a lot of good work, then you're on board. That's basically that on that.
Thank you. And another question that came up is, can you discuss Stanford's computer experience program? So y'all don't have to like give your personal experience with it, but just like in general, like how do you apply for it and like how it works?
Stanford's what?
Computer expense program, I'm guessing.
Oh, I see.
Essentially, there's like or Makai, you were gonna say, go ahead.
Nah, you got it.
Essentially, there's just like there's a computer expense form. I'm pretty sure you can get it online. It will help you out for up to, I saw $2,500 the other day. I thought it was around $1,500. But $2,500 for a new computer. You can only use it once in your 4 years here though, or however many years you need. So be like careful with that. Or if you have like any computer issues, usually if it's just like a quick fix, I wouldn't try and use like a computer expense form for it. I would see if you can get any other help from anybody, like a department even, to try and fix up your computer, but that's what that is.
Yep, I'll just add on that what formally happens after you apply and you get accepted is they'll end up putting it on your financial aid letter and then increasing the amount of aid, whether that's like wherever the money comes from. And then my other advice for in a case that like you may have used it or you don't want to use it to get a computer, another good financial like practice would be to take out a student loan for it, like a low cost one. And the benefit of taking out a low cost student loan is you don't have to start paying for it until after you graduate. So in the case of it's like $1,200, like a new Mac, that $1,200 you don't have to start paying for it until you graduate. So if you're a freshman, that in your favor. And if you're a senior, hopefully you just get your full-time offer and just pay it off. But that's another way for you to, if the computer expense form isn't in your favor, you could take the other like external route. That'll still be, financially, it's a little financially savvy.
Yeah, and 1,200 might seem like a lot, but if you look at Stanford's minimum wage and literally how little you have to do to get that much money. Like I have a job with this office called Cardinal Nights, or this program called Cardinal Nights, and literally all I do is play SpongeBob for high kids, or Jamie, or just like literally just like take kids to the movies or go do laser tag. That's all I fucking do at Stanford, but I make $1,000 each quarter, no problem. So yeah, like money is a little more relative at Stanford when you consider in all like their like minimum wage and like the little things you can do to make that kind of money.
Is it true, Kiara, that if you go to so many Cardinal Nights events, you can have the opportunity to go somewhere super fun, like in a big event like Disneyland or something?
Yeah, so basically, not only are we providing pretty much free opportunities to just have fun on weekends, if you come to a lot of our events, you are eligible to go into this like raffle for literally a ticket to Disneyland, a ticket to Six Flags, a ticket to like all of these different places at the end of like towards the end of the year, just for literally coming and taking advantage of Stanford. Can you believe?
I had no idea. I'm hella gonna utilize that now.
It's okay, now you know.
Our next question is, I don't think anybody on here is a transfer student, but maybe y'all could offer up some advice. A student wants to know, do y'all have any advice for transfer students?
I think I don't have advice, but I do know that transfer student community is definitely one that we often overlook at Stanford. There are the communities, from what I see, are kind of strong amongst themselves, especially if there's like a intersectional identity, for example. Veterans that are transfer students tend to be pretty tight with each other. And I was told by one of their, I think one of their leadership that like a majority of them actually are to fly to. I believe because of the low income part. But yeah, I think one thing is like this school in general kind of overlooks Stanford students a little, so that's a little hard, but knowing that the resources are also for you is probably like the biggest advice I can give without knowing enough. Is like I see transfer students who think like, oh, this isn't for me, when very much it is. So yeah.
Thank you. Another question is, can y'all explain the Stanford bike program? And like, how do you get like bikes and different things, and like go dorm shopping at the beginning of the school year?
So you can buy a bike on campus. To be honest, it's hella expensive though. Would not recommend. Like, don't go to the Stanford bike shop, even if it's still like you can fix your bike for free during the school or throughout the school year with like the Stanford bike program. So say for example you get a bike at the beginning of the year and like something happens to your tire, just like wait to get something in your mail serve, and then like go to this one place and have like the club fix it for you for free. And then at the beginning of every quarter, the Stanford Police Department also like rounds up all the bikes that got left behind or are just like left chained to like a specific spot for too long, and then they resell those.
My freshman year, I went to Walmart and bought a bike. The poor thing I did is I tried to bike back from Walmart all the way to campus. I thought it was a lot closer. It's pretty far. So I recommend. But there's a bus system that literally goes from campus to there. So there's a way. So remember Walmart.
Thank you. And do y'all have any tips on how to prepare for Stanford over the summer?
Read those books. They still got those books going? Those 3 books?
Yeah.
That's all I did. I don't think I did anything special.
Yeah. Honestly, the only advice is just to like, just relax. You've probably worked your fucking ass off for 4 goddamn years plus. Like, there is no need for you to be doing anything, especially now. other than supporting yourself, supporting your family, and thinking about yourself. Like, you're already in Stanford. Who gives a shit? Just arrive and be ready to work. But other than that, like, don't pressure yourself into feeling like, oh, I need to get like 7 more internships so that I can stack up. Like, no.
Mm-hmm. Big retweet on that. Like, I don't think I spent enough time like relaxing and like just not doing anything and like mindless activity, especially because like in high school I was like, after especially, I was like very burnt out, and like I feel like because I didn't like have all that time to myself, there's still like some symptoms of burnout like living on currently. um so I definitely suggest like taking all that time to yourself and like focusing on like personal growth, um instead of like filling your schedule and stuff, so just so that you come in really fresh and like ready to be the best version of yourself.
If that's
Retweeted
not
that.
like what you're looking
Go
for,
for it, Jamie.
no, what do you want? Say it.
No, you're good, Amor. Go for it. No, you got it. Your whole life has led to this moment.
All right, I guess if you're not, trying to relax for whatever reason, I don't know if you're like a Virgo or something, and you're trying to like do stuff.
Not a Virgo.
Okay,
I'm a
well, this
Virgo.
makes sense then. I'm just saying, Earth signs, I see you. If you're trying to do something over the summer that you think is like getting something done, or you'll just feel better, like you're prepared to know what you're going into, there are some bridge programs that I kind of mentioned earlier. So Leland Scholars Program and C, which I can't even remember what that stands for, but that's like STEM E and
Engineering Academy.
hey, that's the one. And then Leland Scholars Program is the other bridge program for FLI students, and there you'll take like our writing course, like the abridged version of it. You'll take chemistry or something. We'll see how that all goes out, but there's info sessions for that on Tuesday at 5 p.m. So look out for links or emails about that.
Literally every person on this panel has some experience in either C or LSP.
Yeah, and it really is a great program. I would say like participating in these programs makes you some of the most privileged FLI kids at Stanford in some ways, because of just how concentrated the resources become on those students. Because what Stanford sees is like, oh, a group of FLI students, let's throw money at them because it's very clear and easy to identify them, but that is very exclusive. And so all I ask is that if you do come into these programs and you do get these resources, you do get these advantages, you share them. You share them to the people that couldn't do it. You share them to the people who couldn't take that month out of their summers to do something for free, like they needed to work and support their families. Like, you share those resources because sometimes the school forgets to. And that's the only thing I ask.
Thank you for that.
Could I throw out one more thing about preparing? Oh, I'm sorry, Amor.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, just about taking care of yourselves. Just quickly on that, because definitely going into Stanford post high school, I worked myself into the ground, did not give myself the space to like recharge for freshman year, and that made especially the first couple of weeks of my time at Stanford a lot more intense than they could have been. So I definitely think that there's just a lot of power in like taking this time, especially now in the context of everything that's going on. Like even taking like 5 minutes thinking like, what's one thing you can do to make your, like, whether it's like you currently or a younger version of you, because when we give ourselves that time and that compassion to like cultivate our joy and live in our truth, that's going to necessarily augment our ability to love and like bring joy to other people. And because like higher education and Stanford in particular can be really oversaturating just with the sheer amount of things that can be done at any moment. I think the more that folks are able to like ground in their truth and be like, this is who I am, and like own like your brilliance, own your radiance, that's going to make it a lot, you're going to put yourself in a position to be a lot more just like grounded and resilient for just kind of like the occasional clownery that arises. But yeah, just like any of y'all, the fact that y'all are in the school like is a testament to like all the work that y'all have done already. And I don't know, y'all are blessings. Like own your blessingness. That was it. Thank you, Emily.
I also want to add something really quickly. I think like on the other end, like if you're like really used to doing a lot of like dumb stuff, or just like don't forget that like Stanford is like a definite campus, and that even though there is a lot of room to like just like mess around, there's probably a lot of room to mess around where you're from too, like just because you like know the space a little bit better. So I would highly recommend like living out like that like time that you have before coming to college to really focus on those things, as well as like appreciating what you have at home, because things are going to change so much. Whether that means that like after your first quarter, or after your first like year or something, if whatever like home means to you, like going back to like whatever space is going to be extremely different because of the experiences that you've had already. And so like come into Stanford, or I would recommend like coming into Stanford with intention. Like, who's the type of person that you like want to see yourself at the end of the year becoming, right? And then like, did you do this throughout the year? Like, what can you do in place? Like, who are the people you want to surround yourself with, and all these other questions about self growth.
Yeah, thank you. And do y'all have any suggestions for dorms with great food and community?
Ethnic themed dorms tend to be pretty damn solid. Like, they just strong community, good food, seasoned food. I think this year even ethnic themed dorms got like a big boost in money. So like, I don't know, like I hope they've been using that for whatever to support whatever local businesses or whatever. But the one catch is, if you enter these spaces, be prepared, whether you are of the identity or not, to really reflect, really have to educate yourself, and really have to navigate the identity and the history and the relationship it has with all other identities, like a lot of other identities at Stanford and the world, because coming into these spaces means being very intentional with your want to understand what is happening here. Sometimes people go in randomly and that's fine, but the truth is like these spaces are very charged with an energy that mandates that you try and understand at least even a little bit your positionality with the identity and topics being presented there. But that's just my take on them.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And then for some freshmen who may not know, like I was just going to add on that ethnic themed dorms usually are 50-50, or 50% identify from that background and 50% don't. So you'll see like a at least diverse range of people there.
Mm-hmm. Also, this was about like good food, right?
Yeah, it was.
The row houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever can talk more about that.
So I have a friend that has invited me to a row house to eat. And like there was really good food. They had like shrimp and steak and like really nice potatoes with like rosemary and stuff. I don't know. It was a lot of that, and they had their own chef. And like I was like, wow. I think it was like, I'm so confused about the difference between a co-op and a self-op. But I think a self-op, you like cook for yourself and clean for yourself, and a co-op is like you have a chef but you still clean for yourself, I think. But yeah, they have their own chefs, and like the menu is catered to like some row houses are more accepting of like vegetarian communities or vegan communities. And yeah, but it's like really good food, also really good community. But row houses are like mostly tier one, and like that's, I don't want to get into the housing process because it's very, very complicated and I don't even know enough about it. But it's for like later in your Stanford career, not for first year. But if you have a friend that can invite you, that's great.
Yeah, these row houses literally, not even row houses. There's also this like suites. So like houses that are not on the row, but they're also kind of like, they're just their own thing. I don't even know how to describe them. I just know that this one place called Outdoor House, which is like obviously outdoor themed and like you go hiking and shit. And there's just surfboards left and right. I have seen snaps of their dinners, and it's like wine and steak and just what the fuck. I don't know, man. They wild in out there. They just have way too much money.
The trade-off I usually see is like if it's really good food, it's usually small amount of options, and if there's a lot of options, it's usually like not as good of food. So sometimes I like a wide array. I don't really know. I want my stern burrito, maybe some chicken, maybe something else. But the really good food, but you only get one option or two, the row houses.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Another question that came up is, how have y'all dealt with social pressure at Stanford?
I'll just say peer pressure is a thing. It's just what comes to mind. It's just being like in the pressures to like do things, like go off campus, go get, join the fear of FOMO, missing out on things. You just see all your close friends who want to do something like, oh, that I want to do it too. But I think we're getting to that age where peer pressure isn't, it's not wild. It don't get you wildly inconvenienced. But I'll say the biggest thing out of peer pressure or social pressure is the fear of FOMO. It's like people are doing things and you can't, especially from a fly background where like you can't do those things because of like a financial barrier. I think that's the biggest way you'll probably see it. Like for example, in my freshman dorm, there was like a breakfast club or like a brunch club. Like a nice subset of the dorm will always go out for brunch out in like Palo Alto. Expensive places. I'm not joining y'all for that. It sounds ridiculous. Campus got food. So I think you'll be able to gauge it. I think you're at that, maturity level where you won't get wildly inconvenienced for things. But would anybody else like to add on or take it a different direction?
I think there's a couple things that happen at Stanford. In addition to that, like social pressure somehow leaks into academic pressure too. There's like this thing, the Stanford duck syndrome or whatever. It's like if you get the picture of a duck through water, it's like above the surface the duck looks super peaceful, but below the surface they're like paddling like crazy to just go anywhere. So there's gonna be like, you'll hear comments from other students or like kind of like competitions of like, I got 2 hours of sleep yesterday just to finish this project, and this person's like, well, I didn't even go to sleep, in fact I missed every meal too. And it's like, that's not super healthy. The best you can, try and like tune that out. Academic skills coaching or ambassadors have specific programs to help you like set up a planner, tell you what an effective planner is in the first place, because there's like major differences. And then like meals and sleep and things are non-negotiables. So like the best you can, tune that out, or if it's really bothering you, just like talk to someone about it. Other pressures, Stanford students especially really like to kickstart a whole lot of conversations around consent and the different types of consent and all of that. And I think with that awareness, it helps bridge the gap or like make people more understanding. If you're like, yeah, I don't really feel like going to a party, or like I don't feel like trying this thing, whatever it is, people are like getting more mature, like Mikai said, to just like, it is what it is.
Yeah, thanks. And another question is, can y'all elaborate on like what the duck syndrome is? Like how do Stanford students, like how do y'all deal with it?
Could you say the question once more?
Yeah, sorry. Can you explain what the duck syndrome is at Stanford and how do you cope with it?
For me, I guess I think Jamie kind of explained it in the last question, but it's like when you appear that you're like calm and you handling everything, but really you're like a wreck and things are turned up on a new level. That's the duck syndrome, because ducks, when they're swimming, they look like they're calm, but under the water, they're paddling a lot. Almost exactly repeating what Jamie said. But how do I deal with it? I usually don't try to front. I think that the social pressure is to like look like you're okay because you see it looks like everybody else has everything together. And like I think that is born out of, everybody, especially in like a freshman dorm context, I'm thinking, where everybody's asking like, oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great. I'm having a great day, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a place where it starts, when people are like genuinely or trying to genuinely check in. and whether or not you lie or not, or kind of like fake the truth on how well you're doing. And you can imagine how if everybody's doing that, that's how it appears that everybody's calmly doing it. But like genuine check-ins from close friends, I'm like, I'm like, man, I had a crazy day, missed a meeting, slept in late, etc. And just trying to be open, especially with the close people I hold dear and care for a lot. But on a personal level, like make sure I get my 8 hours. I'll make sure I get my 8 hours. I'll make sure I sleep though. I'll make sure I sleep as best as I can. And then like throughout the day, I'll take random breaks, mix it into my working schedule where if I'm sitting down for maybe 4 or 5 hours to do work, like every hour or so, I'll take maybe a 15-minute break just to try to break it up. Or every time I hit a milestone, I'll take a walk or something. I think earlier Maximino touched on like the wellness classes that you could take where you could start your day with like a meditation or with yoga at the meditation center in Wendover. So those are just a few of the opportunities that come to mind. But my other panelists got on.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And our next question is like, can y'all just describe like health insurance options at Stanford? Like, in particular, like what's available? Is it free, and what does it cover?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about how to get it, and if you can get it. I mean, like I can't tell you like, okay. So basically, like you can ask the financial aid office with your SUIG, and like contact them to see if you qualify. So you can just email again like financialaid@stanford.edu and be like, hey, do I qualify for like health insurance, and can you like cover it for me? And for me, it was that easy. And then they updated my financial aid award letter, and I got it that way. But I think Mikai can speak a little more to how you can actually use it and like copays and what it includes.
Yeah. I remember once you get it set up freshman year, it usually carries for the rest of your 4 years. Like I don't think I've done anything but use it since. But I used it. I know it covers your every visit to Vaden. I think Vaden is a clear place. If you want to go off campus for like medical care, there's a list of Delta Dental like networks which is the Delta Dental Network is all the local places that accept the health insurance, or the California places that accept the health insurance. And even if you visited, or at least I had a friend that was in Florida, and it was able to work there. So I think that network extends a little bit longer. Your copays might go up for it. The copays I've seen have been they're usually I don't know what the standard for health insurance is, but you're paying a lot less than you would if you didn't have health insurance. I'll definitely say. But you can use it for help or like, what is it, doctors, or you can use it for dental. And I use it a lot for dental. And a lot of it is just one, looking at the network, where can I go? And then calling in and seeing how much you got to pay ahead of time. And for dental, I use like random, like the routine checkups and stuff. So I've never used it for anything like surgery or anything, which I heard could get very expensive even if you have insurance. So that would be something to navigate. But if you do have cardinal care, it's a blessing. My first time having it. So.
Thank you. And what are some weird traditions that Stanford offers?
There are a lot. But I think one that I want to talk about is band run. So like the Sunday before your first day of classes, your frosh year.
Hey, should we be spoiling shit like this?
Oh.
That one's fully supposed to be a surprise.
Oh, true. Never mind. I mean, okay, so
but like full moon on the quad or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's full moon on the quad. There's also fountain hopping. I wouldn't call it like a tradition. That's just like something people do all the time. Is that my email? I'm sorry if that's my email, y'all. But yeah, so fountain hopping, basically people just like hop in the fountains literally whenever you want. It's like people don't usually go in the winter because it's cold. And the water tends to be very, very cold. Even like during the fall when it was like warmer days. The water was still really, really cold. So fountain hopping is really fun. And then full moon on the quad is basically like this night on the quad, usually in winter, that like people go to, and it's been revamped a lot since like it started in the beginning, to include more values of like consent and like peer pressure, and like try to minimize that as much as possible. So this year it was basically like you pick a glow stick of like, oh, I just want like I'm fine with hugs, open to like kissing, or just like I'm here to watch. And those were the three options. And yeah, basically it's just like a night where you can either like hang out or like just, I mean, like express your individuality and like do what you want. Yeah.
I've never heard someone say the words "I'm here to watch" for full moon on the quad. that was so interesting. Another thing, there's Ma's party or mausoleum, where students go to step all over Stanford's grave for a while. So that's pretty cool.
Right, nobody goes
actually,
to
the school spends a whole lot of money on that party. I've never gone, but I guess it can be fun.
Yeah. Also, Nomad. Yeah, basically Nomad is this thing where, I don't know when, I think right at the end of the quarter, I forget if it's during finals week or like before, but like literally people just start a party where they start walking with loud ass music and people start joining in, and then you eventually get to a crowd of like 200, 300, maybe more. Oh my God, these dumbasses were doing it like at the end of winter quarter when we were all freaking out about like COVID. So like that was some whack shit. But you basically just form this gigantic crowd of like drunk, stumbling people to music, and you end up at this place called Term and Fountain, and it's pretty great. Not everyone's drunk, obviously, but like the loudest and most, visible people tend to be pretty smashed at that point. I recommend if you are underage and participating in that and drinking, you like try and put yourself into the center of the crowd, but also try really hard not to like look suspicious or like you're hiding, because the cops kind of know who shouldn't be there. From like what I've heard is that they just kind of watch and they could tell like who's consciously trying to hide that they're not supposed to be there.
Honestly, there's so much to do on campus. Like it's like a really good middle class lifestyle. Like I feel like I'm in High School Musical too, basically.
Thanks, y'all. And I think like this question was kind of answered already, but like just to touch on it again, like what are some self-care tips you have and some study tips like as a student at Stanford? Should I repeat the question?
No, I mean, I can go. Wait, was someone else talking or no?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So basically how I try to practice self-care, and self-care looks differently for everyone, which is something I want to emphasize. But for me, it's a lot about like expressing my emotions and what I'm feeling. So I try to journal as much as I can. I tried to take it up, like to do it every day, but then I just felt like I was being like repetitive and like forcing this thing to come out of me. So I just try to journal whenever I feel like I need to. And whenever, like I try to exercise often, but whenever I'm like angry or like mad or like want to let something out, like I go on a really like nice run, because I feel like that for me just like expels all of like those maybe like negative emotions that I would have expressed in some of other like negative ways. So I really like using running as an outlet for that. Definitely like exercise, journaling, and I also really like showers. Like I don't know, it's just like so therapeutic, and like the water running is just like really nice and like mindless activity too. I also really like listening to music. That can help me a lot, just like tune out from the situation, and just like ground myself a little more. Yeah, and then for study tips, always navigating that, just like I'm always navigating self-care. But I really just try to like put my phone on do not disturb, put my laptop on do not disturb too, because it can be really distracting to have like your messages there and like coming in, and try to focus. Me, I'm more of like a talkative person, so I do try to use like the drop-in hours for tutoring a lot more often. And like Zoom, like now that we're obviously with COVID, like Zoom tutoring and office hours to talk more about it. But I think it's just like a constant reevaluation of like who you are and how much this, like what works for you best.
Something on self-care that I found is that like my best moments of self-care have actually been found in community care. So like surrounding yourself with people who like understand your experience or like what you're even talking about, for sure. Confide in them, talk to them, like be really open and honest. That helps a whole lot with all kinds of vulnerability. Again, utilize like CAPS, DST if you can, if you feel comfy, like wherever you are in that. Spending like putting a lot of effort into your room, I think actually changes the game a little bit. Like set up your altar if you have altars, like get some art for your walls, make the space very cozy, somewhere you can recharge. On like the half of like studying, one of the biggest things is like don't study in your room, don't even study in your dorm if you can. I personally like grew up like we didn't have a table or anything. I really just like did everything in bed, so like it's still been hard for me to like not do work in my bed, but like as much as you can, like they recommend don't do that in your room or your dorm, which is like a social and relaxing space. Check out Academic Skills Ambassadors, truly, because they have all sorts of tips. Like I saw Pomodoro in like the questions. Yeah, that works for some people, doesn't work as well for other people. Try it out for like a couple weeks and then like really just be honest with yourself about like what kind of progress you make with it or don't.
Yeah, another part about like going to college is that you're living at the place that you're going to school. And so your class is like a 10-minute walk from your own dorm, and it's super easy to just be like, oh, I want to take a break and then end up in your dorm. But the way that we like, or at least for me, like I always try to schedule like to be as like productive in the day as possible, but you also have to know that like there is going to be like hours of time where you don't want to do anything, and like you can't stop yourself from that. And maybe that just means like that maybe those are the times when you want to do your self-care, or maybe you just want to lay in bed on social media, and it's so much easier to do it when it's a 10-minute walk from your class instead of like a completely different space. So yeah, time management.
Thank you. So as we get ready to close off, the closing question is, as a FLI student, what is one thing you wish you knew prior to coming to Stanford?
So I can start, and I think that one thing that has been really valuable to me that I didn't think that I would encounter before, sorry, oh my goodness, would be how strong the FLI community is. I do think that like all of the work that like Flip puts in the FLI office and just like different resources towards FLI students have like allowed me to be more like feel more welcome in the like Stanford community as a whole, but especially with the other people that like relate to this identity. So I wish I would have known that like with this identity I will be okay, and like this is something that makes me beautiful, and it's something like very unique in like the Stanford experience. It's like, you know, like as we know, like the school wasn't made for people with identities, but and like a lot of other schools at this caliber aren't, but like claiming that space and knowing that the community is there to like make us feel like we belong there, because we do belong there, makes it so much more valuable and makes me feel really welcome.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Princess and Alain. can y'all show the slide where it's like we have our Instagrams and like our contact information? So thank y'all for attending. Thank you to all our panelists. And welcome to Stanford class of 2024. So if y'all have any questions, if y'all want to follow up or just stay in touch, on this slide is all our Instagram DMs and our emails. Don't hesitate to contact us and ask any more questions.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Feel free
Thank
to
you all for
contact
joining.
us.
Thank you.
Mm.